I first became aware of the ACGT when they broadcast a very unusual funding announcement. We've grown up in an area of neglected funding in an area with complex cell and gene therapies. It's not been frequently and well represented at the NIH and their grant portfolio. So one day I had a message come up that we had an opportunity to apply for grants in cell and gene therapy. It was like manna from heaven.
I remember that when I first came to Mount Sinai to head up this new gene therapy program, I put together a scientific and clinical symposium where I invited the leading scientists in the country in the field of gene therapy and clinical development. And they come and introduce the topic of gene therapy to the scientific community. And little do I know that there was someone who was sitting way back in the audience, never said a word, but sat through the whole thing. And nobody knew who he was. The next thing I know was that I got a call from Ed Netter, and they wanted to have lunch with me and talk about what's this gene therapy business. So I said, sure, why not? So we went off and we sat down and start chatting. What's the field of gene therapy? What does it really do? And what kind of medicine it could develop into to treat what kind of disease. And then we chatted, and to my surprise, he is a layperson, I can tell, but it was catching on very quickly of what I'm trying to say in terms of the technical aspects of gene therapy, which could be obviously pretty complex.
Edward Netter had somehow a vision, and there was never a doubt in his mind. I mean, that was one of the things that struck me when I met him, that he saw how this was going to play out, and he knew enough of the science to see that it could play out. And he even had more confidence than some of us doing it, you know what I mean? And so he was inspiring to have this vision. It was very, very clear in his mind.
Having a group, an organization, and in particular the Netters, standing so strong behind this idea of gene transfer at a time where this was far from being an accepted idea, had an enormous psychological and intellectual impact.
Netters were really the standard bearers in some way for advancing this field and providing money and providing enthusiasm, providing a sense of can-do attitude. And so what stands out from Ed is really all of that. You know, he took his sweat equity, his money, and he used it to help people like myself. And not only did the money help, but also that sense of go get 'em. We can do this together.
Most of the biotech companies and large pharmaceutical companies are in the business of inventing new, novel, branded medications. So for them to be successful, at the basis of their business has to be innovation, something that is substantially different than what's available. And this is where ACGT's interests and that of pharmaceutical companies intersect, because ACGT has a focus on a particular area of innovation that is underserved.
He was very optimistic, but he was also very realistic. He knew what it would take to move the field forward. He knew that it would be extremely important to support young investigators, people who are just coming into the field, because these are the individuals that are likely to make the major breakthroughs that are going to develop gene therapy to the point where it's going to be clinically useful. Of course, he had many established investigators on the Scientific Advisory Board, and the foundation has also funded established investigators. But he realized the importance of balancing this with an emphasis on young investigators.
the way that he's set up, he's clearly designed from, I think, from a person that has been in business for a long time, that knows that seed money can actually make a huge difference. And I think that's how these grants are set up and the support is set up. He's having a two sort of track is very, very important. And I think they realize it, and Ed realized that supporting young investigators in this field is very, very important, so that you create the people that in the future are going to make big differences and big advances in these areas.
So the premise and the promise of gene therapy is really based on an idea where we can manipulate the human genome to fix a problem. So, and this can really run the gamut. It can be from fixing an inborn error, and it actually has been done successfully for children who are born with a type of immunodeficiencies. It can be done to heal organ dysfunction, such as eye disease. Or in my world, it can be harnessed essentially to improve immune-based therapy for treatment of cancer.
Cancer therapy is a very complex matter. Cancers are different from each other. They have different Achilles heels, if you will. They're very heterogeneous, and they are very difficult to treat all with the same drug. One of the futures of medicine is going to be individualizing therapy for each particular tumor. And molecular therapy and gene therapy are really at the forefront of this approach, because they rely on the fact that you have identified a molecular weakness spot within the tumor, and you are delivering therapy or you're attacking that spot directly.
Many people in the field of cancer therapeutics have focused on what we already know works. That would include drugs such as the chemotherapeutics most people are familiar with, that developed back in the 50s. Other people can see the future. They see that 10, 20 years in the future, there's something that could be better, something that could be useful. And it's that combination of being able to make a giant leap, but then the slow, painstaking, step-by-step trial and error work that Carl and his colleagues performed that really allowed us some of these recent advances that I believe are going to set the stage for the field of gene therapy.
From NBC News World Headquarters in New York, this is NBC Nightly News with Brian Williams.
As we've been telling you here tonight, there is some good news to report in the fight against cancer. An experimental treatment for leukemia is having extraordinary results beyond any expectations. How often do we get to say that? It's small so far, but the results are big enough to get out to the world. And tonight, as our chief science correspondent Robert Bazell reports, if it hadn't been for one woman who suffered a loss, this very promising research might not have happened.
Bill Ludwig says doctors told him without the experimental treatment, he would have had only weeks to live.
I'm now in a position of full health, no cancer in my system.
Ludwig is only one of 3 patients who have gotten the novel treatment for the most common form of leukemia called CLL. But the results out today are so spectacular that many believe it could mark the beginning of a major advance in cancer treatment.
In each of those patients, more than a pound or two of tumor was eradicated.
The team at the University of Pennsylvania removed white blood cells that normally fight infections, genetically engineered them with a harmless form of HIV to make them attach to and kill cancer cells, and return them to the patients in one infusion.
How good were those results compared to your expectations?
The results exceeded our expectations quite a bit. Our entire team is really excited. And as well, the patients are excited.
Why only 3 patients? The research concept was so new that neither the National Cancer Institute nor pharmaceutical companies would fund it.
And how does he sound?
But Barbara Netter did. She and her late husband Edward started a charity to fund new ideas after their daughter-in-law Kim died of breast cancer. It will take years to know if the initial excitement is justified, but for now, 3 lives have been saved. Robert Bazell, NBC News, Philadelphia.
To be a cancer clinician and a cancer scientist, you have to be a bit of an optimist. But let me tell you that given where we currently are in cancer biology, cancer science, and application, my feeling is that cancer is going to be a soluble problem in my lifetime. And I would venture to say that something's going to happen big in just the next 5 years that are going to make it possible for us to make this, if not a curable disease, one that is a disease like HIV now that you can live with for a long, normal lifespan.
It's essential that we get full participation by folks who are in the position to support the ACGT. For example, the funding levels for the percentage of grants that are funded in cancer and related fields has gone from 30% or 25% down to 10% in the last few years. And we don't see an immediate end to this. In fact, there's the possibility that there's going to be an additional cut in the NIH budget. So this is going to have a profound effect on clinical research and basic research in the field of cancer. So ACGT has the potential to cover the shortfall that we're seeing at the NIH, and this is absolutely critical for us to develop cures.